Hi, I'm Stuart Clayton and welcome back to Lick Library. This is the third in a series of slap and pop lessons. We've already covered the basic slap and the pop in lesson 1, as well as the muting technique. And we've already covered the hammer-on, pull-off and trill in lesson 2. Now in this lesson we're going to add another element into the mix, and that's going to be the ghost note. The ghost note is really important to the slap technique because it adds a real percussive element into the style. Now, ghost note sounds well. It sounds exactly like a dead note. It's a pitchless note, and it sounds like this. Okay, now the way that you perform a ghost note is exactly the same way as that you performed muting back in the first lesson, and that is just by lifting your finger from the string slightly. So if we were to fret an A and hit it, if you just lift your finger slightly off the fret and strike the string again, you're going to get a ghost note. Okay, so we're going to start off with a simple exercise that's performed entirely on the E string, and this is going to be we're going to start off with quarter notes, and then we're going to move up to eighth notes. We're going to alternate between pitched notes and dead notes. Okay, and that's all there is to explain about ghost notes. We're now going to look at a series of bass lines that put these to use. This first one is going to be in the key of E. Okay, so that was a line incorporating some ghost notes, and it was played entirely on the E string. So I started off with a basic figure of 2/8 notes followed by 16th notes. And that pattern was used in all 4 bars. I just altered the slapped note from an E to be a G, an A and a B. Okay, let's look at another use of the ghost note, and this is used in the same manner that Mark King might use the ghost note. There's like a sort of a chugging rhythm. And what I mean by that is this popular figure of an 8th note followed by 2 ghost 16th notes, and you get this kind of effect. So you get a kind of chugging rhythm. So we're going to look at an exercise now that exploits that. Okay, so in that exercise I built up a bass groove using this 8th note, 2 16th notes pattern. So all I was doing really was fretting an A, a C, A and a G, and in between each one I was adding 2 ghost notes. Okay, the same pattern continues in the second bar, where I play an A, a C, a D and an E. The third bar was the same as the first. And in the fourth and final bar, I used a ghost note in between a slap and a pop. Now, this is a really common use for the ghost note, so I used that, I followed that with 2 8th notes, and then the same figure again. So we have. Okay, so let's move on now and look at a different exercise that makes use of the ghost note. What we're going to do now is pop ghost notes, and again this is performed in exactly the same way. You just lift your finger very slightly from the fret to prevent it ringing correctly, like so. Okay, here we go. Okay, now we're going to look at another groove that uses a ghost note in between popped notes, and we're going to extend what we looked at in the previous exercise to include two pop notes with a ghost note in between each one. So we're going to have a figure like this. Okay, so in between each popped note we're bouncing with the thumb just to create a ghost note. Okay, now let's look at a bass line that incorporates that figure. Okay, so in that exercise I combined the figure that we looked at just beforehand with an ascending melodic figure. Once again I incorporated the slap 8th note followed by two 16th note ghost notes at the end of the second bar. And in the final bar I rounded things off with a hammer-on and an ascending run back up to the root note with this Okay, so that's one of the more popular uses of the ghost note in the slap and pop context. Let's look at another groove now that puts it to use in a different way. Okay, now in that exercise I was using ghost notes in between hammer-ons, once again taken from the pentatonic scale. So in the first bar we have two slapped root notes, and then a popped octave, and then I played a ghost note followed by a hammer-on, followed by another ghost note, followed by a hammer-on, another hammer-on and a pull-off. Okay, so that first bar. Okay, so it's using the ghost note in between hammer-ons. The second bar, I used the ghost notes as a percussive effect, rather like a kind of a drum fill in that kind of context. Bar 3 was identical to the first bar, and in the final bar I used the percussive slap and pop figure again. Okay, so now let's look at a final exercise that uses the ghost notes. In this exercise we're going to use them between popped notes again. Okay, so once again in that exercise I was using the ghost note as a bounce point between the popped notes in that kind of way. It's a really popular use for the ghost note, and it should add an extra element of spice to your own slap and pop lines. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.